I'd say for most of my career, even before my career, the issue of the federal judiciary, the Supreme Court, has been at the forefront of my mind. I wrote an entire book, my first book, Men in Black, on the Supreme Court. Then, of course, we have the lower federal courts, the appellate courts, and below them, the district courts. And so what's happening in the next 2 months is Joe Biden, Chuck Schumer, and the Democrats are trying to ram through as many lifetime appointments to the circuit and district courts as possible. They don't play fair. They're not interested in rules. They don't care about the election. They got one through yesterday, who, if he's not the most radical, and that's saying something, is certainly one of the most radical lawyers ever, on the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals. That covers Florida and Alabama and Georgia, among other areas. On the Circuit Court, the appellate court, right under the Supreme Court. So the Democrats are trying to get these lifetime appointments, almost 30 of them, on the federal courts now, so that their radical agenda, which was just rejected by the American people, can continue. Woodrow Wilson, a racist segregationist, a Democrat progressive president, he made it clear in his writings, as an intellectual, as a scholar of sorts, and I've written about this, that the way to change America is through the judiciary, because the American people themselves will not vote for the kind of change that the so-called progressives, a.k.a. American Marxists, seek. Another communist, Italian communist, Gramsci, he wrote that the so-called proletariat, that is the middle class, as the communists call it, the proletariat, will not rise up and overthrow a country that they voluntarily fight to defend and protect. And so that must be imposed on them through the bureaucracy from the top down, one step at a time, secreting into the culture, secreting into the civil society. So the judges and the top down bureaucracy. So this evening, as I speak to you, that's at the forefront of what's going on. The Democrat Party is trying to ram through 28 radical, make it 27 now, judges, who will impact your lives for the entirety of their lives and your life. And they're trying to prevent Donald Trump from getting key cabinet positions filled so he can reject the Gramsci communist viewpoint of how to control America through revolution, the top down through the bureaucracy. And so the Democrats haven't surrendered anything. They haven't learned anything. They don't care. Their little revolution is ongoing. And they're using the unelected parts of the government, the judiciary and the bureaucracy, to try and advance their cause. The unelected part. This is very important to understand. Very important to understand. I will not oppose any of the nominations that President Trump has made or will make to his government. Because even though I don't agree with every single one of his appointments, so what? The problem is this is the team he needs. This is the team he wants. Whether they like it at National Review, whether they like it at the Wall Street Journal editorial page, whether they like it or not. He was elected president. And don't tell me, well, he's not a dictator. We already know that, and we don't need lectures from you fools. On the other hand, he's not a patsy. He's not a Pollyanna. He just won in a landslide. And that's a fact. And giving him the cabinet that he wants and senior positions that he wants doesn't make him a dictator, for God's sakes. They slow-walked his appointments in 2016, made it very, very difficult for him in key cabinet positions to do what he wanted to do, while they were plotting to impeach him, while they were plotting to unleash a criminal investigation against him, to undermine him, to subpoena him, to bog him down. That's not going to happen this time. It's simply not. Because of you and me, we're not going to allow it. Well, people out there are giddy. We are happy. People are giddy. People are vying for positions. We are the watchmen, you and I, who are keeping an eye on the Republic, keeping an eye on the Democrat Party, keeping an eye on the media. We don't trust them. They don't embrace our ideals, America's principles. They simply do not. Now you're hearing a growing chorus in the media that Donald Trump didn't win a mandate. He didn't win a landslide. Tell me, what election did the media win? None. In fact, they lost the last election. Who do these people think they are to be telling us what happened in the election and what didn't happen? Who the hell do they think they are? Who named them God Almighty to determine events, to have the final say on what's going on in our society and culture? They're nobody. They're worse than nobody. They hate the country and they hate us, and we know this, as a matter of fact, because they've said so. The words they use, the names they use, the way they use their platforms. It's disgusting. Yes. So now they're trying to destroy Pete Hegseth, a war hero. A war hero. They said nothing about Dougie Emhoff. They said nothing about Tim Walz and his sickening, pathetic background. His ties to communist China. His ties to a jihadist imam. His perverse obsession with sex changes and all the rest of it in his state. That was okay. The fact that Kamala Harris didn't prosecute priest pedophiles, wouldn't speak to the victims, the children and their families, wouldn't prosecute any of them, that was a non-issue during the campaign, you remember? Well, I remember. Pete Hegseth. Remember Barack Obama and his ties to the Islamists? Remember Barack Obama and his mentor and out of the closet communist? Remember all that? No, that didn't matter. Remember Jeremiah Wright? They barely covered it. So we and others kept pushing it. Then they couldn't ignore it. But then they blew it off. Remember all that? Remember all the allegations against Bill Clinton? Sexual molestation, rape? George Stephanopoulos, who now is basically the head honcho at ABC News, ran the war room, the quiet silence, these women. Remember all that? Remember Ted Kennedy and Chappaquiddick? Remember all that? Where a woman actually died? The cover-up took place? Horrendous cover-up. And the media participated in it. I can go down a long list here, folks, a long list. The idea that somebody, and I'm just using him as an example, that Pete Hegseth isn't qualified to be the Secretary of Defense is pathetic. Like Pete Buttigieg is qualified to be Secretary of Transportation. Like Anthony Blinken is qualified to be Secretary of State. And I can go down the list. Like Kamala Harris is qualified to be vice president, or Joe Biden is qualified to be president. Dementia Joe. We don't need to take lectures from these people. They don't get to choose Donald Trump's government. They don't get to blow off me and you and the millions and millions of people who voted for this president and voted for him to do what he said he would do. A handful of senators who didn't even face the voters, they're going to decide the fate of this administration? Not while I'm behind this damn microphone. I'll tell you that right now. And these Republicans in the Senate who don't get off their fat asses and show up on the Senate floor and block these radical left-wing judges? What the hell are you there for? I can understand why some of these people are busy. Honestly, J.D. Vance is vice president. I get it. He has to go back and forth from Mar-a-Lago. He's involved in significant decisions as the vice president in waiting. I got it. The others, no. No excuses. None. I don't care if you've been nominated to be this, that, or the other. You show up at that Senate and you protect we the people, the American people, from lifetime appointed radical left-wing Marxist Islamists, because we have to live under their rule. It's the most important damn job a senator has. And the idea that you'll go to a rocket launch, that's right, even some of my friends, that you'll go to a rocket launch or that you'll do something, I don't want to hear about it. Do your damn job. This is job number one. All of you. The Democrats show up. They're ramming these bastards through one circuit court, one district court after another. That affects us when we go to court. We want a judge who's objective. We want a judge who's going to follow the Constitution. We want a judge who's going to follow the law and the facts. We don't want some radical ideologue dressed up in a black robe. As I said, my first book was on this, Men in Black. I don't care if you want to watch a rocket launch, you want to raise money, you want to have a big dinner. You put your butt in that Senate, that chamber, and do your friggin' job. And we're going to start taking names here and start reading them off. That's what we're going to do. Oh, and the recess appointments. These clowns that write these pieces about recess appointments. Like somehow liberty's at stake. Liberty's at stake. I'm not a big one on recess appointments, but let me tell you something. They've been going on since the beginning of the Republic. They've been going on since well after the horse and buggy, since we've had jets and trains and planes and buses. George W. Bush had 177 recess appointments. Did anybody talk about freedom then? Anybody? Clinton had recess appointments. There have been a zillion, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of recess appointments in this country. The Supreme Court had an opportunity to kill off recess appointments. It's in the Constitution. They didn't. They limited them, but they didn't destroy them. They didn't get rid of them. Why? Well, think for a second. Like these phony brainiacs who do not, and write their pieces and pat themselves on the head and then quote each other. Think for a second. If we didn't have the recess appointments, what do you think a Chuck Schumer as the Democrat leader in the Senate would do to a Donald Trump and his nominees? He'd block every damn one of them. And there'd be no recourse whatsoever. That is, massive power shift to the United States Senate. Not even the full Senate, just a basic majority. By an opposition party, maybe a few Republicans, like a Susan Collins and Elisa Murkowski, would have the ability to cripple an incoming president of the opposite party. These fools don't even think these things through.